Hello and welcome to another episode of the British and Irish Eagles podcast. And I don't know if anyone was listening in last week. My voice was a bit loud when I listened back, so I've pulled the mic a bit further away. So hopefully this is a little bit better for you guys listening in to me. But it has been a very exciting week of Eagles preseason. We've had not one, but two joint practices with the Cleveland Browns. And we also had a game with the Cleveland Browns, which was this Thursday night just gone by. Late for those in the UK and Ireland who were listening in to watch it live. I watched the first half, cut the second half today. Mick, I believe he did the same, and I think Phil, you watched the whole thing today. It was a good game. There were some ups and downs in terms of injuries and performances. We're going to get into that in detail, of course. We're also going to talk about the joint practices and what we saw there and what that means for the 53-man roster, which the Eagles are going to have to whittle down in the next few weeks before the start of the regular season. But I will bring you in first, Mick. The beard game is looking strong. We've got my Mailata shirt in the background for those who don't watch us on YouTube. Some whiskey collections, ball action, the British and Irish Eagles flag. You're primed and ready, my friend.
Yep, as usual. But ready to talk about the game that we just had. I sort of wish I had watched it in the reverse that I did. So, like you said, I watched the first half live and watched the second half in the morning. The second half was a lot better than the first. The first half was, we'll get into that.
Absolutely. And Phil, your first full week, we've got to give a job update, right? We've been doing the last few podcasts. First full week of your new job. It's going well, slow start, but you'll get there, my friend. How you doing? You looking forward to the weekend?
Dun 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 dun. Phil's job update is now. Yeah, like you said, I've started. Sorry, that was terrible. It went better in my head. It's been great. I've met my work colleagues.
It wasn't quite the Sky News countdown, no. Yeah.
No. I've met my work colleagues. We're all kind of communally realising that we've all been delayed about 2 months equally. So it's nice to feel part of a company of people that are getting forgotten about. But hey, it's a good start to a new job. But hey, we're there. I'm earning money and I can enjoy the birds a little bit more now that I know that I can actually not worry about that sort of thing.
Absolutely. It's brilliant, my friend. It's brilliant. Looking forward to the weekend. It's my dad's 60th birthday bash tomorrow. So I'll be down in Kenilworth enjoying that at a barbecue. We'll watch the Lionesses play on Sunday morning and off work on Monday to have a round of golf. So nice little jolly of a weekend coming up for me. Looking forward to it. But let's get into the Eagles practices and also we'll then move into the game last night. Mick, a little bit like watching the second half before the first half would have been better. It would have been better if you watched the second joint practice with the Browns before the first joint practices of the Browns, because day one didn't start very well for the Eagles. It was a poor day on offense. It was a poor day on defense. I think Jalen Hurts was sacked 7 times on day one in joint practices. Now, obviously, we know those sacks are blown dead a bit early. Hurts his escapability. Maybe he gets out of a few of those and makes some plays. Who knows? But it wasn't a great practice. But let's not focus too much on day one, right? Day one of practice, whatever. Let's move on. Let's focus on day two and maybe an overview of the players that had a really good few days. I'll bring in. I'm going to give you, Mick, the nice one here. I'm going to let you talk about our number 9 overall pick in this year's draft and what a great couple of days this guy's had.
Yeah, talking about Big JC. The guy is as advertised as Phil put it in, I think, in the pod notes. Jalen Carter, I didn't have any worries about how this guy was going to perform because I watched him all last year, and the guy's a stud. He just is, plain and simple. He's a stud, and you see it now being recognised from around the league when they go around, the training camps and get updates on Rookie Watch and all this sort of thing, and say, how did Jalen Carter fall to 9? And well, we know it was off the field stuff. It wasn't on the field. I think everyone knew what the man's capable of. They were just weren't willing to take that gamble on the person. Whereas Howie, with his massive balls, decided, you know what, Philly is the place where a guy like that can thrive. A guy that has his teammates around him. He has familiar faces, and he has like a really good atmosphere, a really good locker room, and guys with their head firmly on their shoulders. So it's the best possible outcome for Jalen Carter to be in the Eagles, and so excited to see what he's going to do this season. We were talking about it last week on the podcast. We were saying, is it possible that we could be looking at Defensive Rookie of the Year, possibly the first that the Eagles have ever had in franchise history? And it's a real possibility because this guy, he's shining through against the ones in joint practices. There was a tweet that said they put Joe Bitonio on his arse, who's a Pro Bowl guard. One of the best. In fact, Cleveland have an excellent offensive line, one of the best in the league. A couple behind ours, of course, but it's still noteworthy that this guy is able to play at such a high level already. I mean, this guy, that we're only a couple of weeks into camp. He's not played a snap in the NFL yet.
This could have gone so differently, Mick.
So all this buzz, it's great.
This could have gone so differently, right? Because of the stuff that happened pre-draft, his head could have been a bit muddled, and that could have knocked his confidence a little bit, and let's say after these couple of joint practices we haven't seen a flash from Jalen Carter, and all of a sudden, you know what it's like in Philadelphia and the media and the fans and everything, all of a sudden the buzz is, why did they waste a pick 9? This guy's head's still not in the game, There could have been murmurs around that, but it's just blown out of the water. This guy's going to be an absolute stud for years, and it's great to see Howie Roseman continue his upward trend on draft picks over the last few years, and I'm excited to see what Jalen Carter can do.
Well, Howie will be delighted with that, because he's put his neck out there picking him in the first place, when none other of the GMs took that risk on, and with the depletion that we had in the defensive line, remember we lost Hargrave in the offseason. We're like, worried about the Eagles pass rush. Jordan Davis doesn't rush the passer. Who have we got left to do that? Fletcher Cox is on the decline because he's getting older. How he needed this guy.
Milton Williams as people are. He's not on our pod notes, and a slight segue here. But a lot of people are talking about Milton Williams this year, and Eagles players are saying it. Like Fletcher Cox is talking about it. Milton Williams had a lot of hype coming out of the draft. He was a 3rd round pick, I think he was. Out of the draft, and a lot of people were saying at the time, likening him to our Rams defensive tackle. Similar size.
Everyone gets.
It does, but it happened to him first. I'd seen from an Eagles player, and he's had a decent start to his career. He's had
a game towards the end of last season, definitely. Yeah,
he did. He had a 3rd round start to his career. I mean, he didn't have a start like he was a 1st or a 2nd rounder, but he got better towards back in the last season. You're right, and everyone has been raving about him this year. So now you look at a position that you mentioned, Mick, where we were really worried when Gravedigger left for a big old bit of cash in the offseason. And fair play to him, he deserved it. We loved his time here. We wish him well, unless he's playing against us, of course. He won't get many sacks against our offensive line compared to some of the other offensive lines in the league, for sure. But now you look at a positional group which has Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, and Milton Williams. I'm feeling very, very good about my rotational defensive tackles going into the 2023 season, barring any injuries, of course, which obviously we hope will never happen. So putting Carter aside there, and not to Williams, might talk about him later on in the podcast about something completely different. So watch out for that. Mm-hmm. Phil, I want to bring you in, sir. And this guy could be this year's shagger. And that is Reed Blankenship. Talk to me about what we saw from Reed Blankenship over the 2 days of practice, because I'm not sure I've seen an individual performance that was that good in an Eagles during practice in quite a while.
Well, first off, I mean, I know the suggestion was made about us anointing this year's shagger and coming up with a person each, but if I'm honest, lads, it feels like it's only one guy to me. And I'm happy to have a debate and we can do a little game. We can dance around the houses about it. But I think ultimately we're going to settle on this guy because he's absolutely coming to his own. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Shagger 2.0, departed. We were generally thinking before the behind the scenes stuff and the clapbacks started happening, we were generally quite disappointed that the guy hadn't been signed to a contract. He seemed like he'd come into that position, revolutionized it, been that kind of that injection of enthusiasm, aggression, skill into a new position as well. And obviously he went down injured for a couple of games last season, and Blankenship came in, did a perfectly seasonable job to the point where I think when Alex went down, CJ went back to corner because it was better to put Reed in to cover safety than it was to find a backup. Was it Josh Jobe, I think, at nickel corner or something like that. Anyway, we're going down that rabbit hole. But
he's split between both
He's split between two. But coming into the season, there were still sort of questions like, was that a flash in the pan? His little shot in the team. But he's come in and he's picked off Deshaun Watson 3 times in 2 joint practices, and I think we're talking about practice as everyone banged on about, and ultimately the caveats around the scenario of exactly how he got picked off, but you don't do that 3 times and it be a one-off fluke or it's just because of this. Well, twice Zach Cunningham tipped the pass and straight to Blankenship, and I can't remember the second time. I think it was just a straight up interception apparently.
Yeah, you've got to be in position to make the plays. So.
Yeah,
and he's in the plays. He's in the right position to make the plays.
He's definitely in the plays, Phil. Yeah, he's definitely in the plays.
He's definitely in the plays. And he seems like he is going to be the guy that everyone's going to get behind. I mean, there's plenty to get excited about. Nolan Smith, Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo, all these players are sort of like having little flashes and that. But I think
you're missing one big one there, Sidney Brown, Mick. Eh?
Sidney Brown as well, but I think generally because obviously Reed was in the team last season, we've seen it in games for the Eagles. I think we've been hurt before, lads, but I'm ready to get hurt again with Reed. I don't know about you guys.
Are we going to do it now? Should we fuck it? Shagger of the season. Phil has put his stall out. Is it too early? Would you like a couple more weeks?
No, I'm fully into it. I think Shagger is a title best bestowed on someone who is not a sure thing.
So you can't have so parameters around this conversation, to be clear. I can't have Nolan Smith if I wanted Nolan Smith as the shagger. Nearly a second round pick.
I think it's got to be. It's more than just being a guy that.
He's an underdog.
It's more than just a guy who comes in and does the job that he is expected to do, or maybe above expectation. There's a certain je ne sais quoi around the shagger title. It has to be a gut feeling. It can't.
They've all been defensive players so far. Are we sticking? It has to be defensive. Can it be an offensive player? It's an
interesting point, really, because I've not really considered it, and I'm trying to, while you were talking, then trying to think about why maybe we gravitate towards defensive players. Is it the aggression? Is it the impact that they can have in a game? Is it
tends to be tackles as well, doesn't it? Like a lot of them have been linebackers, safeties, because of the coming up and making plays when it matters.
That's probably it. You're probably focusing on the right area, which is it's about the guy who comes in and smashes someone and can change a game. Like it's all like nothing, not taking anything away from Smith and Brown and Hurts and that, throwing a dime down the field and doing 100 yards receiving or 500 yards throwing. It's about that moment where that guy went, "You're mine," changed the game on a dime. Like because defense, I think offensive plays are glamorous, but good defensive plays can turn a game. And I think that's what you like about the shagger title is he's the guy that you kind of think, we've got him. He's going to drive that defense and he's going to make that play and he's going to turn that game when we're sort of maybe not at our best. And I think
okay, I'm going to put some out there. Okay, I'm going to put some candidates out there. All right. Sure. So we got Reed, who we just talked about.
AKA Ellis. Ghost, by the way. It's called that? Ghost.
Oh yeah, Ghost? His nickname's the Ghost, isn't it?
I kind of like that. That's kind of it's kind of sexy.
So who's your candidate then, Liam?
I'm not going to say candidates. I'm just going to put some down. So I want to clarify whether they're going to be accepted as candidates before I put a candidate down. That's okay. So Ellis could be a clear candidate. Yeah. Would you say McQB2 as a third round? I'm not saying they could be the shagger. I'm saying would they be classified as a shagger under the whatever?
I think it's something you have to feel in your heart as well. Yeah. I don't think there's any real clear.
There can't be any doubt.
I just don't feel like Dean could be. It just doesn't resonate with me at all.
There can't be any doubt.
So Reed and Sidney Brown.
I think between those two.
I think they're the two locks for me as to who it could be, because they could both be the starting safeties this year.
I love how we're spending like 10 minutes just trying to identify a shagger on the team.
Hey, it's a big part of the podcast, Mick. The listeners want to know. They want to know.
It'll only be a quick one, Nick said earlier.
Well, I've just had a pop-up on my laptop say that your computer will restart in 57 minutes. So we know how long we have. My computer restarts at 10 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock now for those listening and wondering how long the podcast could be. Okay, so we've got Reed, we've got Brown. You're saying Ellis can't be in the mix? No Ellis, no McQB2.
No, because there's too much doubt around them. Like, there can't be any, like, this. It's the basic. Okay, would you be confident getting in a McQB2 jersey? Would you be confident getting an LS? I think that's probably obviously an obvious answer, but you probably wouldn't. But I think I'd kind of be okay getting a Blankenship jersey because I feel like he's done enough.
You would get a Blankenship jersey over in a McQB2 jersey, would you really?
At this moment in time, probably, yeah. I think there's too much. There's still McQB2's had, and we'll get onto it. He had one really good play, the forced fumble, but so far that is pretty much the only thing that we can kind of hang a hat on McQB2. And I think if you're going to anoint someone shagger, it can't just be on one forced fumble in the training.
I don't think it is, though, is it? He was the best defender on the best defense in college only 2 years ago.
Yeah, but we're not in college anymore, Liam. This is a shagger.
Well, he needed a year to get over his injuries, and he could have been a first-round pick, and he dropped to the third round. You're not letting me have McQB2.
No, potential is not a criteria for shagger. Shagger has got to be something that you've seen and you believe in. And I don't think you've seen that. I'm not saying he can be. I mean, we're talking. You want to talk 12 months' time.
I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. You need to have seen multiple plays, multiple reasons why this person is showing up over and above where he could be.
We haven't seen that. Equal balance, potential, and substance that you've got to go.
Could you have
seen enough? And I think you can get even better.
Would you allow me Milton Williams then on that basis?
Yeah, but I don't think he's glamorous enough to be called shagger. I think he's like you're in the right ballpark.
But he could. But hang on. We're talking about guys we've seen make plays. He's made plays. He was a third, fourth round pick. He got better last season. All the players are talking about him in preseason as being the next big thing on the defensive line. He's not a first, second round pick.
It's like we're anointing the next pope.
He's not a safety or a linebacker, and I'm not sure I feel comfortable pigeonholing the shagger position to safety and linebacker.
You've never heard of a shagger called Milton?
This is a good point. I think you're more than entitled to make it, but in your heart of hearts, when you think about it, it just doesn't feel like it could be anyone other than.
I am not as high. This might be controversial.
It might be because you're not as high.
I don't do that sort of thing, Philip. I'm not as high on Reed Blankenship as I think you both are. I'm not saying he's not going to be a great player for the Eagles. I just don't think I'm swinging my dick around everywhere about him. Well, yeah, he had a couple of good plays in joint practices, 2 of which were tipped into his arms.
And some NFL games, some
NFL games.
NFL games.
I'm not denying that he's not going to be a starter for the Eagles this year. I'm just not sure I'm as high on. I am not comfortable saying the only candidate for Shagger is Reed Blankenship right now. I don't feel comfortable enough saying that. Not with another joint practice to go, another game to go, and then the first couple of games of the season. I'm not sure we anointed CJ Gardner-Johnson until like week 1 or 2 or 3 of the season. I'm not sure it was done.
I think CJ
this
got
is
it.
important, Phil.
Half the reason CJ got it was because we couldn't be bothered saying his name.
It's not that. It's the fact that you might have seen in my camera. My wife has just crawled into the office on all fours, trying not to be in the camera, and I've just watched her go in.
I can see her head now, actually. Yeah.
No, that's the cat.
Oh, that's the cat. That's all going on. It's like Dr. Doolittle over there. Okay, so
I think we should get a couple of candidates and we'll put it out to the members and we'll let the people decide.
Where did I put it?
But we'll give it our best reasoning.
Or we each 3 pick a candidate to start the season as our 3 shaggers. And after 3 or 4 games, we put out for a vote as to who is the shagger. Give them some time to make some plays in the NFL. What do you reckon about that?
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, guys, I'm back.
It's okay. You just missed more shagger conversation.
It was a headphone emergency because I'm using my wife's headphones. So.
You got to swap them out.
No.
She wants to go listen to some Mozart in the other room.
She needed the backup pair, and I had no idea where they were. So you probably heard me go, I don't know where they are.
I did not hear
to mute my microphone.
Did not hear you say that, so you're all good.
But,
so before you say so this is what I've just suggested. So each of us nominate a shagger for the season to begin. So you get a shagger, I get a shagger, Mick gets a shagger. And then after 3 or 4 games to be decided, to give them some time to perform on the big stage over the preseason, we put out to a vote the 3 people we've all selected at the start of the season, and then the public and the fans decide which one is anointed shagger based on the first 3-4 performances of the season. So there's an element of projection there as well.
Can I?
Yeah, of course.
I was thinking about whoever wins buys the jersey.
Yes, love it. Love it.
And to go on that, we could try and get a Eagles, maybe a Kelly Green jersey with shagger on the back and take it to a week in November.
That's a great shout. Or so either the winner. I feel like the winner winning it and then having to buy the jersey is not fair on the winner. I feel like the 2 losers buy the jersey for the winner.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll probably I'll go Milton Williams and you'll have Reed Blankenship.
I think Mick can probably do a decent design for one of our merchandise T-shirts with the player and shagger in some graphic, maybe as a bit of a compromise.
Let's all agreed. Let's move on. If anyone's still listening to the podcast, we've got loads of stuff to go through. 2 joint practices. We talked about Carter. We talked about Reed Blankenship. We've even talked about Milton Williams. Christian Ellis got absolutely thrown to the dogs when I brought his name up. McQB2 didn't do much in those practices. We talked about what he did in the game yesterday. Hurts and Brown. I think it's worth mentioning the offense for a wee second. Hurts and AJ Brown continue to dominate through the air. The trust, I think, that Jalen Hurts has when AJ Brown is one-on-one matchup anywhere near the end zone, it's almost like throw it to his back shoulder, throw it so he can turn around and jump and out-muscle the defender to grab it out of the air. Something I want to see time and time again.
Did you hear? Sorry, did you see Colin Cowherd's list of wide receiver and quarterback combination? He done like a top 10 of the top wide receiver quarterback combinations in the NFL, and I think Burrow and Chase were number 1. And where do you think? Have you seen this, Liam?
No, I have not. No.
Okay, where do you think AJ and Hurts were on the list of top 10?
So this is looking at the quality of the quarterback and the quality of the wide receiver, or is it looking at the connection between them?
Oh, did you see this? Yeah. And you're on mute.
You're on mute. Still on mute.
I'm going to let you run with it. Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay. So this is an interesting question, because you've got Stafford and Cup. On there, you've got Allen and Diggs. Oh, no, I have to write these down. You got Allen and Diggs on there. You got Cousins and Jefferson on there. I would normally have Adams on there, but who's he got? He got Carr thrown to him this year, Devontae Adams.
No, he has.
The
Jimmy
Italian Stallion.
Yep.
So I'm not going to put those two on there. You've already mentioned Burrow and Chase. Mahomes hasn't really got anyone to throw to. Hang on, is it wide receiver? So Kelsey's not in from a Chiefs perspective, correct?
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, it was just receivers. So.
Receiver. Okay, so Mahomes and Kelsey must be way up there, I would say. You got Hurts and you've got AJ Brown. Ooh, Hopkins. Not sure where he is now.
Is it the
Titans. Okay, so he won't be on there. Am I missing any wide receivers here? Brown, Chase, Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Diggs, Hill, but I'm not going to put him on there because of Tua Tagovailoa. Mahomes and Kelsey's on there. Okay, if I look at these, I reckon Allen and Diggs is probably ranked higher than Hurts and AJ Brown, even though it's correct. Okay, Burr and Chase is. I reckon Cousins and Jefferson is probably ranked higher than AJ Brown and Hurts.
Correct.
I reckon Mahomes and Kelsey is rated higher than Hurts and Brown.
Correct.
I reckon Stafford and Young is probably rated higher than Hurts and AJ Brown.
Okay, Stafford didn't make the list.
Okay. So we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd probably have Hurts, AJ Brown 5 if I was choosing. But yeah,
you're really into this, Liam. I'm surprised how far you went with this, but
okay. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the game.
So I'll run the list from 10 to 1 if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 10.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you understand.
Tua and Tyreek Hill at 9.
Mentioned them, but didn't think they'd be in there. Okay, but yeah,
Dak and CD Lamb at 8.
Oh yeah, okay.
Cousins, Jefferson at 7. Allen Diggs at 6. Carr Olave at 5. Rogers Wilson at 4.
Oh wow, yeah.
Mahomes Kelsey at 3. Lawrence Ridley at 2. And Jamar at 1.
Hang on. Did you just say Lawrence and Ridley at 2?
I did.
What's he on?
It's
Hobbs and AJ did not make the list.
That is ridiculous. I'm really glad we didn't plan this and we did that live, but I'm fuming now. That's absolutely outrageous. Jared Goff?
It's such bullshit. I hate giving the guy like any airtime, but
that's exactly what he meant to do because we're now talking about it for 10 minutes.
A few minutes.
That's what he wanted. Yeah, you know what I mean. But,
all right, listeners let me know what you thought about my top 10. I'll release a top 10, Mick. All right, and we'll tag Cowherd in. See if he replies.
I like it.
I'm sure he won't care.
I know. Cool. All right, let's move on. Preseason game, Philadelphia against Cleveland, which was last night, of course. Don't like doing this, but let's talk about the injuries which marred this game. Couple of scary ones. Moro Jomo, Tyree Cleveland. Tyree Cleveland, we talked about a bit in the last podcast, and has flashed, it's fair to say, in preseason so far. He's been the go-to wide receiver for both quarterbacks, especially Tanner McKee, both of whom were stretchered off the field. And we can confirm, because the Eagles have released it in the last couple of hours, that Jomo has a concussion and Tyree Cleveland, I believe, has a concussion and neck sprain. So we wish them both a speedy recovery. Zach McPherson, definitely the worst injury of the evening, went down and was ruled out, and has now been confirmed to be ruled out with a torn Achilles for 7 to 8 months. Zach McPherson's had a bit of an up and down camp so far. He's been trying to get that back up outside cornerback position to make the 53. Ironically, wasn't having the best game so far before his injury. We mentioned him on the chat a couple of times last night live. One particularly bad play. I think there was a couple of bad plays, but as someone who's had a serious ankle injury, it's not good for a cornerback who has to turn quickly on their ankles again and again. So hopefully he comes back sooner than expected. Nolan Smith and Olamide Zacchaeus exited the game with injuries. However, both did return to the sideline, and there looks to be no issues with both of those. I just want to throw this at you, Phil. Nolan Smith. I think I might have said it in the chat last night, but Nolan Smith. I don't need to see Nolan Smith again, please. I don't need to see him again in preseason. He was on special teams. He was flying all over the field. He looked great. I don't want to see him pick up any injuries. I think we've seen enough that Nolan Smith is going to be a rotational defensive end. He's going to be used to rush the quarterback. You can drop him down into coverage at linebacker if you need. We don't need to see any more than Nolan Smith, right?
I get where you're coming from, and based on the fact that he is a pick number 30 in the draft, and he fell so far, so he's potentially a top 10 draft pick. But he's a rookie, and this is the NFL, so I don't see a problem with playing for a bit and the playing that they have, how much they have so far. And he's done well. I mean, you argue the comparison between him and Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter's been very careful, like a couple of snaps. No,
that's what I mean. Both first round picks.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from that. Yeah. Maybe the Eagles want to bed him in a little bit more. Maybe there's something there. They go, we'll just give him a few more snaps, because there's something else they want to see. There's something else they want to train into him, because they want him to be the best he can be going into the season. Like, there's a difference between someone like Jalen Hurts or Brown or Devontae Smith being out, because we 100% have seen them in the NFL and we don't need to see them anymore. I guess what I'm essentially trying to say is that I trust the Eagles are keeping him a bit more because there's something that they need to see. But after tonight, I'd agree with you. He doesn't need to play in the last preseason game. Keep him fresh. If he's had a bit of a scare as well, I think that's even more prevalent to say, let's not put him in for the Colts preseason game. We've seen enough. We don't want to risk doing anything more to him. So I can see both sides of it, as always. That's the beauty of being in my position. But I think that we want to see him for the excitement as well. I think there's a few of us go, I just want to see a bit more, just a bit more, like that. Having that extra biscuit from the jar in the cupboard. Do you think you don't need that fifth custard cream? But you have it anyway, because you want to see a little bit more. You want to taste a bit more of it. And I think I'd be surprised if he played as much against the Colts, and then when he'll be ready to go week one to smash into Mac Jones and the New England weak Patriots.
I see where you're coming from. I stand by my point. I feel like we played him too much so far. Yes, he's a utility guy. Yes, he's a utility guy. Yes, he's like...
If a player gets injured, sorry, to quickly interject. If a player gets injured, then he's been played too much, because you think, if we just held him back one more snap, he might not have got injured. But I think that's, hindsight's a wonderful thing. If he hadn't had a scare, would we be as worried about him playing any more snaps?
When did he go off during the game? Do you remember what time, when he went off during the game, Mick?
It was first half.
It's first half. I'm trying to find the snap count.
Yeah. He had 23 snaps.
He had 23 snaps in the first half.
Yeah.
And he played a lot of snaps from memory in the first game as well.
He had 4 on special teams as well.
He had 4 on special teams as well.
So they were putting him all over the field. He's a guy. He's athletic. I can see why they want to get him on the field, because you just want your playmakers on there and see what these guys can do. And they've also been doing that in training camp. We know, and they've been playing him at inside linebacker as well as on the ball linebacker. So they're just trying things out, and
I think that's it, mate.
Come up a cropper on this preseason game, and he's carried a slight knock on the tackle that he made. But like I said jokingly in the group chat, just forfeit the Colts game. I don't want any more guys going down. That's two games now that we've played, and we've lost 2 guys for the year. We lost Sean Bradley in the first one, but lost Zach McPherson in the second one.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I think that does actually probably shed light on the sort of the missing point that I was trying to look for, which was the difference between him and Jalen Carter. Why you sort of you don't need to see any more Jalen Carter, because he's got that role. He's demonstrated it. You don't need to see any more. Whereas if they're trying to see what Nolan Smith can truly do, put them all over the park, they're going to need to see a little bit more of him. So they want to sort of. Right, but that's the risky take, isn't it? The more risk you put,
again,
the more
I
chance for
see where
something
you're
bad
coming
happening.
from. I see where you're coming from, but you don't spend pick 30 on a first round pick and then need to see what he can do. You know, they know what Nolan Smith can do. He's young. He's got loads of time to develop. He's one of the younger rookie draft picks we picked up this year, I believe. I got that one wrong. And he's very enthusiastic. He's very good. He's probably the most athletic player on the roster, behind maybe Sidney Brown. If you're looking at athleticism, so those kind of players can play more. But I see where you're coming from. I completely agree with your point, where you could make the argument that it was fine before he got injured, but now he's injured, hold him back. Let's not see him anymore.
That'll probably be the bit that's made them kind of go, all right.
Yeah. Interesting to see what they do with the Colts
got lucky
game.
That it wasn't anything more serious than that.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. So let's move on. Other injuries. Josh Andrews also went out with an ankle injury. And before the game was announced, Hassan Reddick is undergoing thumb surgery. However, we are expecting him to be back for week 1, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Let's talk quarterbacks. And I'm just going to hand Marcus Mariota over to Mick to discuss. And watch the fireworks go.
So we were talking last week whether or not he was blowing off cobwebs, or if he's just absolutely shite. And I think it's the latter, because I got nothing from Mariota in that game. In fact, I got nothing from him in the game previous. I've had nothing from him in training camp. And you know, after the first game, I thought, was I being a little too harsh on Mariota? I was thinking, you know, he's been consistently behind the second string O-line who have struggled. And when he's in the joint practices, you get tweets now and then that he's hit a guy in stride and all this sort of thing. And I was sort of softening to him a little bit. I was like, oh, Mick, just stop being a grumpy old bass. And then last night happened, and I thought, no, I'm out. I am out on this guy. Like, he can't hit a barn door. There was players open on the field, and the ball was just sailing over their heads. Jimmy Kempski put a good meme out. You've probably seen it with the stick figure and the ball sailing over, which just summed up Mariota's game. We're crying out for Tanner McKee to come in. I was hoping the second quarter, but it never materialised, didn't come into the second half. And if I could get my time back, I would, because I was sitting up to 2:30 in the morning watching absolute dross from Marcus Mariota. And I've said it all. I'm just out on the guy. He hasn't proved anything in an Eagles jersey. And we've had people saying, oh, but he's still going to be quarterback 2. Why? Like, honestly, why is it just because that's
I'll tell you why.
Thing to do? Like, why?
I'll tell you why, and I don't agree with it, but I'll tell you why. 8 million reasons why, and no saving this year by cutting him. You save a couple of million next year by cutting him, but there's a lot of money invested in there. He was the 18th ranked quarterback in the NFL last year when dropping back and passing the ball. Sounds mad, but what we've seen, right? But he was the 18th quarterback in the NFL last year of starting quarterbacks on dropbacks. And that didn't include any of his rushing ability on the ground with his legs. Yes, he's been terrible for pretty much all preseason. He's been terrible in joint practices. He's been terrible in training camp. He's been terrible in the preseason games so far. He looks awful. That interception that went over the receiver's head was more like a punt than a throw. It went that high in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous. I think I've seen Gary Owens go lower than that in rugby before. He was dreadful. So I'm complete. I can see why the line is still Marcus Mariota is our QB2 because of the amount of money paid, because of the save face from Harry Roseman initially wanting to draft him all those years ago.
See, I don't think that's a good enough reason. For me, the money isn't a good enough reason. You look at the 49ers and they said, we spent a fuck ton of resource on drafting Trey Lance, and they've named Brock Purdy as the starter, a guy.
Well, he didn't do very well last night.
But he took them to the playoffs, and he took them to the NFC Championship game. And no matter what we think of him, he still was a capable quarterback, and he was taken in the last pick of last year's draft. So the 49ers had the balls to say, you know what, this guy is doing what he needs to do in the jersey. Doesn't matter what he's done before. And that's the way the Eagles need to think about this quarterback 2 position. Doesn't matter how much you've paid Marcus Mariota. You pay the guy that's on form. You pay the guy that's going to make the plays. You pay the guy that is hitting receivers, because Mariota's not doing it.
I agree. So let's talk about the guy who is.
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's really pertinent. I've just quickly wanted to have a look at when you mentioned the dead cat and the reason why he's likely to be QB2. Do you want to hazard a guess?
But also,
remember,
before we go on, it's not. There's 2 points there. It's not just the money.
No, I know.
It's also the fact that the sample size of Mariota over the years is way bigger than watching Tanner McKee throw a few balls in a couple of preseason games against second string defensive cornerbacks, third string defensive linebackers. The sample size of Mariota, if you were Harry Roseman and you were looking at the two side by side, is I need to see way more from Tanner McKee before I can disregard this guy who was, as I said, 18 in dropbacks last year. We give him £8 million. He could run the same offense as Jalen Hurts can. Yes, he's had a bad preseason, but we've seen Marcus Mariota before have good games, win games, win many games. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify. It's not my reason.
No, I'll re-clarify. I'm not dispelling your only point. I'm dispelling one of the points, which is, can you remember how much of a cap hit or how much money we just threw away with Joe Flacco last year?
Ooh. Flacco the year before.
6 million?
Sorry, the year before. Either way, whenever it was, we threw away $3.5 million with him. And I know it's not
what would he be throwing away now? 5 in dead cap?
Possibly. So, what the point I'm trying to make is that the Eagles are not strangers to making that kind of decision, signing a guy, giving him a load of money, and then going, actually, no, we've changed our mind. We're going to bring in someone else. And Gardner Minshew ended up coming in and doing that job instead. And I can't remember what we paid him. I haven't looked that up. But the point I make is obviously that's the big thing that people are in the argument saying, why Mariota is going to be QB2 is because we paid him money. And I'm just saying that issue I don't think is as much of a,
which probably means my second point is more relevant when you're Harry Roseman and you're Nick Sirianni. And that is that sample size is massive for Mariota, and it's Mick. To be clear, I agree on the eye test that I've seen so far. If this continues to happen over the next 2 weeks, and we don't see a marked improvement in Marcus Mariota, then I want Tanner McKee as the quarterback 2 suiting up at the start of the season. I don't want Mariota suiting up because I'm with you. He's looked absolutely dog shy. He's looked like he's, a CFL player, not an NFL player.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to cut him. I think I'm not saying that he'll be cut. I just think that Tanner can leapfrog him in the depth chart.
And I think that won't happen until. I don't think that will happen before the season starts, no matter what Mariota does between now and then.
It probably won't. I can see a scenario, heaven forbid, if Jalen did go down.
This is what I was going to say.
And Mariota came in, he would probably struggle, and he would get the clown pole pulled off the stage.
That's the only scenario I see that happens. The only scenario I see Tanner McKee, unless he really impresses in training camp and Mariota continues to flap. The only scenario I can see Tanner McKee playing in an Eagles jersey this year is he goes down, Mariota comes in, plays bad, and they go, okay, we can't risk the season on this anymore. Let's get the 6'6", Stanford-educated stallion at quarterback in. I mean, I don't know if you guys listened to the Birds of Friends podcast today at all, but Bo Wolf had a raging hard-on for Tanner McKee, to the point where he said a few things. Let me just some stats on Phil that I'll bring in. So he's had 5,300 passing yards over the last 2 years at Stanford. He had 28 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, and he had 2-to-1 touchdown to interception rate. Average rating of around 130 as a quarterback over those last 2 years. And he was throwing at absolutely sweet fuck all. A lot of the drops and interceptions were attributed to bad wide receiver play, bad tight end play, bad offensive line play. He was playing with nothing. And some of this I'm taking from what Bo said earlier on. But also the character of the man. Apparently when the rookies all started the season, he was out there talking to all the rookies saying you need to go through play-by-play drills. He said that his job is to know every single player on the team's job. So if they ask him a question as a quarterback, he can tell them the answer. So he sounds like a 10 out of 10 guy. He sounds like he's had an incredible start to the year. Could be a diamond in the rough that fell into the 6th round. Harken back to we paid Carson Wentz all that money, and then a quarterback came in and took his job, just paid Hurts all that money. That's definitely not going to happen here with Stanford. Could he be backup? Could he be the backup quarterback next year? We don't have to pay anyone any money. He's cheap as chips for a couple of years. Yes. Could he fill in for Jalen Hurts if he continues what he's doing and pass to the wide receivers that have at his disposal that he didn't have at Stanford? Maybe. Could we sell him on for a future high draft pick capital? Hopefully. But the best scenario for Tanner McKee is we don't see him in an Eagles jersey because we want Jalen Hurts there.
Yeah. I think. Sorry, was it?
Go on, Mick. Sorry, Phil. Go on, Phil.
Apologies. No, so I was listening to Elliot Shaw Parks, our favourite beat writer, with his podcast.
Your favourite beat writer.
I'm gonna go tell him.
We've had a few beat writers though. We got Sheil Kapadia coming on next week.
I know. I'm just saying. He's the nation's favourite beat writer. The beat writer you need. Okay. He did a podcast without James Heltzer today, basically titled Tanner McKee versus Marcus Mariota, because he's got a particular bee in his bonnet about, it's probably similar to Bo Wolf, about the fact that how good Tanner McKee was versus Marcus Mariota.
I think Bo Wolf might marry Tanner McKee. I think his family are in danger after listening to that.
I think a lot of people are sort of getting a bit of a semi on about Tanner McKee at the moment. But I think he made a good point in this podcast, which was, and I didn't think of it this way until he said it. I was like, that's actually brilliant. Further on from the 2A, 2B that we were talking about in the last podcast, which is, depending on how you want to scheme a game, I think this is even better than that. And it's based on the fact that if, touch wood, whatever happens to Jalen Hurts, if he was to go down in a game, so third, fourth quarter, needs to come out for a few snaps. Or the rest
already
of the
35 points up by that point anyway. So
possibly, most likely. You'd rather have Marcus Mariota come in to see the game out and to carry on, because he is as like for like as you can get in a backup quarterback. So the scheme doesn't have to change. He can bring him in.
Let him throw the ball. Just rush the ball, please. Mariota.
Just bring him in and do whatever Hurts is doing. Yeah. You're getting a B Tech Jalen Hurts with Marcus Mariota. If Jalen Hurts, heaven forbid, went down for longer, so games, between games, weeks, seasons. You want season. Sorry, think about season.
Jesus.
You'd want someone like Tanner McKee, because you could re-scheme the offense around him, talking a more sort of semi-permanent rather than temporary.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
And I think, and he made this point, and I kind of still see the logic in it. It's the case of, if you want a band-aid, you need Marcus Mariota. If you want a cast, you need Tanner McKee.
Like it, Phil. Nice take. Nice take, my friend. Tanner McKee. Hopefully we don't see him.
I'm also forgetting that I watched Tanner play Notre Dame twice over the last couple of years.
Did you forget him because you absolutely smashed him out of the park?
No, we actually lost to Stanford last year.
To Tanner McKee?
Yes.
Oh dear.
So that wasn't a great game.
But surprised you are rooting for Tanner.
It was the box score was awful game.
Okay.
But Stanford's offensive line never didn't help Tanner out, and the bad weapons, and Notre Dame were terrible. But anyway, this is a Notre Dame podcast.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll set up our own one, Mick. My new Notre Dame fandom. Let's pause here for a break because I'm going to restart my computer because I think we've got more than the 23 minutes I've got left to chat through before my computer restarts. So we'll take a pause for an advert, and we'll see you in 60 seconds.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuren to suit any taste palate. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar, fly Eagles fly.
We're back, and we are back. We have discussed so far the quarterbacks in the game yesterday. We've talked about the injuries. Boo. We've talked about the training camp battles, specifically about the 2 joint practices with the Browns this week as well. Some interesting conversations there about Shagger, which we're looking forward to getting your feedback on. And we've got a few more positions to talk through from the game last night. The wide receivers and tight ends. We'll probably throw those in together. It wasn't a lot to chat there. Offensive line, we can probably gloss over. Running backs, a few interesting plays happened. And defense, we've touched on already, but there's a few people we need to call out on the defense side of the ball. So strap yourself in for the second part of the podcast. Mick.
Yes.
Looking at the wide receivers and the tight end positions, I was getting slightly overexcited about Cleveland, who's now gone down injured, and it looks like he will be back for the start of the season if he's selected in the 53. Can we talk specifically about that wide receiver position? We could touch on the stats from last night. There's Ngata made a couple of big plays. Really helped his stock, I suppose, to make that 53. Do you think, if you're looking at Greg Ward, Joseph Ngata, and Cleveland, are we looking at the 3 players vying for a single position on the 53-man roster when we look at those 3 guys? And if so, where are you landing so far on who has their nose ahead? Ngata's obviously got a higher ceiling. He's younger. Greg Ward is, as I said last week, I'd have Greg Ward there regardless because of how safe he is. I think Cleveland, 25 years old, hasn't done a lot, but is good on special teams allegedly, but has done a lot in his career, but has done a lot so far to impress. So where are you ranking these guys so far?
Yeah, last night was such a funny game because I expected one of the wide receivers to really show out, and I suppose Joseph Ngata sort of has his head a little bit above the others. I know Cleveland went out with an injury. A big part of the wide receiver play was how bad the quarterback play was for the first half of the game. We don't need to go over old ground, but
doesn't help when the ball is sailing 15 yards over your head.
Yeah. Exactly. But then when Tanner came in, Tanner was shooting some lasers out there, and the wide receivers bobbled the ball a couple of times. There was a few drops. They were coming down with the ball, and it just popped out on one of the sideline throws. I think that was maybe to Ngata, or it might have been Cleveland. But for me, at the moment, I think Ngata is still in the lead. I like his size, I like his physicality, and I think that he's just got great potential. He's a former 5-star recruit, going into Clemson, and he didn't really reach his full potential there, but that can be unlocked at somewhere like the Eagles, where you've got Nick Sirianni being a wide receiver coach and can take this guy under his wing and so he can start producing. But the guy, he did make some plays in college. As I recall, he had a really good game against Georgia.
Good team to have a good game against.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure. I think he put over 100 yards on Georgia in that game. So the guy can make plays.
Potential's there.
He does have it in him. The potential's there, definitely. Like you said, I think we had a sort of mini argument last week about Cleveland and that, he's not a young guy. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But Ngata is. And Greg Ward, we know what we're getting there, but I think the excitement factor is there for me as well with Ngata. So I would be more inclined to take him with us on the journey than the other two.
Phil, I want to bring you in on this one as well. This is a pure fence opportunity take here for you, right?
I don't need an opportunity. I'm always in the fence.
Because you've got a high potential, exciting young prospect in Ngata. Mick mentioned former 5-star recruit out of high school. I would say bowled out last night. 5 targets, 3 receptions for 39 yards. Nice 13 yards per catch when he did bring the ball in. And then you've got Greg Ward. I'm going to put Cleveland to the side for a second because I think Cleveland is either going to end up on the practice squad or he's going to be claimed by someone on waivers. I'm not sure. The injury I think is going to stop Cleveland making it on there. In my opinion, that may not come to pass. But so I'm looking at Ngata and Greg Ward, not Joel Ward. He's a left back for Crystal Palace, who I played against once in football. Greg Ward, flex, yeah. Greg Ward and Ngata. Greg Ward, you've got the security, 3 receptions on 4 targets, 29 yards, averaging 9 yards per catch. He played well in the last game. He's shown up clutch when he needs to. If clutch is too generous, it probably is. But he certainly clutches the ball out of the air and doesn't drop it very often. So you've got safety and security in Greg Ward, and you've got high potential athleticism youth in Joseph Ngata. You look at those pieces with your Howie Roseman head on, your Nick Sirianni head on. How are you balancing that risk versus reward?
Yeah. Like you said, it's a perfect opportunity to be on the fence. And
perfect opportunity to say Greg Ward and just sit there, right?
I think that based on the fact that 1, 2, maybe 3 are pretty much locked in, barring injury, maybe even 4 if you want to go with Zacchaeus and Watkins as locks. Doesn't leave an awful lot of room. I think
they're locked. They're locks. Watkins,
yeah,
3-4, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, bar injury, I think they're almost certain to be locks. But we had this discussion last week about Greg Ward. He's just a dependable. He knows the team. He's been there. He's solid. As far as when you're looking for a 5, Greg Ward fits the bill. So if you want to be safe, don't even have to say safe. You can just say if you want to be. The common sense pick is to say, just why are you looking past Greg Ward? He's the guy. He's solid. Like, you don't need anyone flashing because you've got your 4. So he's not really going to have a chance to flash. So there's not going to have a guy who might flash because if he comes in and he gets one opportunity in one target in one game in 17 games in an NFL season, and the chances of him flashing in that game or that catch are very, very small. So the logical, sensible choice would be to go with Greg Ward. That being said, obviously I can't just give one side of the fence. I have to give both sides. Joseph Ngata seems to have a strong pre-season, so he deserves an opportunity. So and I'd be more than happy with either. I generally would. Why have you got a giraffe on your head?
No. It's my pen holder. I like throwing you off kilter sometimes, Phil.
You definitely did that. I think it's more of a case of I'd be absolutely happy with either. I feel like I'd be a little bit deflated. I think my gut feeling would be deflated if it's Greg Ward because it's the sensible pick. It's not exciting. You kind of go, it makes sense. Let's just go with Greg
Ward. So if
Ngata
Ngata flashes in the next joint training camp and the next game against the Colts, than Ngata. But if Ngata fails to,
it comes down to waivers. I think Greg Ward, vested veteran, won't get picked up on waivers. So you can check him on.
Imagine being an outlier wide receiver in the NFL. Like it's ruthless, isn't it?
It's
it really
ruthless.
is.
So I think if Joseph Ngata does flash, that's 3 preseason games, that's 3 practices, through all the preseason that he's been solid. He will get snapped up by someone.
He's been solid, if not spectacular, though. He's
okay. Maybe I'm overbreaking it, but what I'm trying to say is that in terms of if you're another team in the NFL where you're looking for that guy, he's going to get put on the waiver wire. You think take a flyer on him because you've got a bigger need than the Eagles do. Because we're talking about wide receiver 5. There's nothing to say that Ngata couldn't be a 3, in a much weaker team, when a much more desperate team.
Teams less likely to go, oh my God, Greg Ward has fallen into waivers. We need to go and grab him right now.
Well, he won't. That's the thing. So we're talking about Greg Ward won't, because he'd be classed as a vested veteran, if I'm correct in saying. So it's all a bit calculated, saying you've got more chance of getting Greg Ward on the practice squad than you have Ngata. So if you put Ngata on as your 5th, and you put Greg Ward through waivers onto your practice squad, then you can easily rotate them around. But if it will, I think it will depend on whether he has a good game against the Colts, because you're not going to take that kind of risk or make that kind of statement, put him as your 5th wide receiver if you don't believe in him, just because you think you can get Ngata through waivers, or you couldn't get Ngata through waivers, but you can Greg Ward. I think if he's definitely earned the right to be in the conversation. I think if he has another strong game, he should be taken as the 5, just because then you can have both of them if you pick him in the 53.
Okay, projections. Who's the 5th wide receiver taken onto the team, Mick?
Well, Ngata had the most snaps last night of all the wide receivers, but we are forgetting about.
It might just because they want to see more from him, though.
But we are also forgetting about Devin Allen. We're forgetting about Deon Kane. We're forgetting about our punt returner. What's his name? I've forgotten already. Britton Covey.
Covey.
So you've got those guys. So we're sort of maybe talking about a wide receiver 6 at this point.
You reckon? Okay.
Yeah, because I think Covey will probably get carried on to the 53.
If
I'm going to have to pick that, I would say Covey before Ngata, but after that, I would say Ngata.
Does the running back position, and I'm going to have to go get my charger, so I'll leave you to answer this while I go get it. But does the running back position, with having running backs like Gainwell and Swift, who can suit up at a wide receiver position if they needed to, certainly pass catching options, and the potential depth at pass catching option at tight end mean that the Eagles don't need to take 6. So before we go into the running backs, we'll do that in a bit. Let's talk about tight ends specifically. Russell, touchdown last night. Dan Arnold we brought in. Got Tyree Jackson there. Jack Stoll's around. And obviously we've got Dallas Goedert. So talk about those guys for a second. And specifically, what's your running order of those tight ends so far for the Eagles? Come on, Phil. Tyree Jackson had all that hype last year, right? You did brilliant in training camp.
I knew you were tempting me into this. I knew you were tempting me because if I look at my notes right now, I couldn't help myself, and I put Tyree Jackson 5 exclamation marks and a big smiley face because of that grab and those yards that he managed to get. What was it? I have to bring up the notes again. I've turned them off temporarily, but his long was 35 yards in that catch, and I remember sort of
his catches for 41 yards, one 35-yard catch.
Yeah, so he had a big statement play, but then so did so did Arnold, but so did all the other and Russell, all the tight ends kind of got a good rotation, a good showing. So I think that was generally one of the themes of the offense, was to try and cycle through and give a lot of the tight ends some 2 tight end sets, some blocking, some because Arnold for the touchdown was Russell for the touchdown was absolutely wide open, and that seems to me that was the theme of the tight end room, or the receiving call was like, let's see if we can get some tight end wide open in space. People going not expecting tight end 4 or 5 to be wide open 20 yards from the end zone and then to sort of spin and run in. I think it's a good position to be in. I'm not going to lie, Stoll's always been a little bit of a vanilla kind of, like when people look past Goddard, you kind of go, what else is there? Calcaterra came in, but
his name's a bit shit as well. It's a bit boring. Jack Stoll. Jack Stoll's in. Brilliant. Okay, excitement levels through the roof.
I feel a bit harsh saying that, but yeah, you're probably not far wrong in the subconscious when you're sort of thinking about it. But
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. And Phil Mount Stevens is lining up the tight end going down the ring. We got McGivern lining up. Liam O'Neill isn't as exciting, but both
if my surname's too much for a restaurant reservation maitre d' to read out, then a commentator's going to have a nightmare as well.
Now you'd have a nickname. You'd have a nickname to counteract that. Defense for what?
The Mountain.
The Mountain. I know how tall you are.
I mean, I think the tight end room is quite an interesting one and something that a lot of people aren't really talking about at the moment. And you're right, Phil. It's like we have Goddard, who is like one of the top 3 probably tight ends in the league, and behind him we've got nothing. We've got a motley crew of guys that are just guys, and I don't know about you, but I've never been super impressed by Grant Calcaterra. And I
didn't even mention
he didn't get an awful lot of opportunities. I think he was injured and Goddard went out for 2 or 3 games.
Yeah,
and there was nothing because I don't think they were prepared for Goddard being out altogether. I think they were just looking for someone to complement Goddard. And then when he went out, it was like, well, we've got nothing, and you knew there was nothing coming from the tight end game because it felt like there was nothing. There's no depth or substance there. It feels very much that they've kind of looked at that and gone, well, that was a massive problem. They've obviously looked at the season review and gone, tight end 2, 3, 4 is a problem. And that's what they've been trying to do. And it, again, it's why I love this team so much. It just feels like there's no delay. There's a problem and it gets looked at. They seem to be actively doing stuff to try and improve these situations. So, these guys, I had no idea half of them playing last night, and
I was quite impressed by Brady Russell last night.
Yeah, impressed by his hair. He's the one.
Well, he's known as a blocker, so he's not. Yes. He's not supposed to be a pass catching tight end. He's known for being good at his block. So if you're looking for how many tight ends are you going to take onto your 53-man roster? 4?
Probably 3.
Probably 3. So you're looking at Tyree Jackson. They're not going to cook Calcaterra, not yet. So you're looking at Goddard, Tyree Jackson, Calcaterra. Is Tyree Jackson even making it?
Stoll's a lock.
Sorry, Stoll's a lock. So Calcaterra's not a lock, would you say?
For me, he isn't a lock. For me, Calcaterra isn't it? I don't think he's earned it. I know that he was drafted by the team, and that holds a little more weight than UDFA's. But look at
was he a 6th round pick?
I think he might have been 5th or 6th round, something like that. But look at Reed Blankenship. He was a UDFA. Now he's starting safety. We're calling him Shagger. I think Brady Russell has a bit of Shaggerism about him.
Oh, that's a shout, mate. Mix shout for Shagger 3.0 is Brady
I think
Russell.
The chance of Brady Russell making the 53, even after last night's performance, is very, very slim.
No, of course, but I mean, he had
he did do well.
He had a good couple of tackles on special teams as well. You don't often see that from a tight end.
Yeah,
he was dancing around the field. He got the touchdown.
The touchdown, 22-yard touchdown.
I'll be keeping an eye on the Colorado kid for the next.
All right, I'm going to do another prediction, and I think we need to highlight this again in the next. But I think you've made a good point. Not enough people are talking about tight end as a positional battle for the Eagles team right now, and I think we should look at this a little bit closer. So I'm going to pick my horse right now. Your horse is Arnold. My horse is not Russell. Sorry, not Arnold. Definitely not Arnold. He's on there. He did catch both catches for 2 7-yard catches. Sorry, a 9 and a 6.
I thought he could have done more to get the first down. I think he went down a bit. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So my horse in the race for tight end 3. After this podcast, I'm going to do some research and see how often the Eagles carry 4 tight ends. But for now, I'll say 3. Stolen Goddard locks. I'll take Tyree Jackson. You taking Russell, Mick?
I'll take Russell.
Okay, and then Phil, you've got Calcaterra, as well as the two we've chosen. You got Arnold, you got Russell, you got Tyree Jackson. What do you reckon?
Again, I think you're probably right. I think common sense will prevail. Stoles a lot, Goddard's in there, and there'll be maybe one other. And I think probably Calcaterra. I feel like he'll be in there as well, despite maybe not like setting the world alight. But again, because Stoll's in there for reasons unbeknownst to me, in terms of why if it was my train set, he wouldn't be. I think I'd be having Tyree Jackson and Brady Russell just because they've been exciting me. But then that's why I'm not an NFL GM. So
maybe you should be. Who knows?
But yeah, it's hindsight's a wonderful thing. My team, Brady Russell, Tyree Jackson might set the world alight if I put them in a team. But it could all go to kaput when Goddard goes out and they both flame out massively. So I can see. With the tight end position, it's dual threat. It's not just about the tight ends are split into two, aren't they? It's pass catching, blocking. Some tight ends are blocking, some tight ends are more pass catching.
Jack Stoll was an undrafted free agent as well, right?
Yeah, it just depends who you can get through waivers at this point. To be fair, I mean, you won't get through waivers, but you'll get Brady Russell through waivers, and you might get Tyree through waivers. They really like him.
They got him through last year on waivers, I'm pretty sure.
Tyree hasn't done enough. Unfortunately, he scored a touchdown in the NFL, yes, and the times he has been in it, he's done not too badly, but he's not reliable. You can't rely on him. That's why Stoll would go is there because of reliability. He knows the team and he can be relied upon. It's just whether you're looking for more pass blocking. More blocking tight end, or whether you're looking for someone who's actually good, because we all get diluted by the top five. So we're looking at Goddard's always on the periphery of the top five tight ends in the league. When you look at Kelsey is not a tight end. He's not viewed upon as a tight end, is what I mean. He's not. People aren't going to go, oh, the tight end Travis Kelsey. They talk about the receiver Travis Kelsey. I mean, his blocking is okay, but he is that phenomenal as a pass catcher that it's kind of warps.
So let me throw this at you. Tyree Jackson, undrafted, signed as an undrafted rookie. Dan Arnold was signed as an undrafted free agent. Calcaterra was drafted in the 6th round. And Jack Stoll was also an undrafted FDA. So out of all of them, I know this doesn't mean a lot, Calcaterra was the only one the Eagles spent a draft capital on, and not too long ago. So there might be something in that. That means that Calcaterra does.
I think the difference between a later round pick on a tight end and an undrafted free agent tight end are pretty closer than maybe other positions.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Offensive line, I don't think we really need to talk about too much other than perhaps Sills struggled a little bit, Mick.
Yeah. It was a bit of a revolving door at one point in the game, and felt a bit sorry for Mariota a little bit. What was that?
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
That was the next bottle of fizz opening.
That was the Piston player. Josh Sills didn't have the greatest game, so I mean, we'll see.
So look at the running back position now, and hotly contested battle this year for the Eagles. We've talked about it a lot so far in these previous podcasts, and there was some decent plays, and there was some not so decent plays. Phil, I'm going to bring you in on this one, sir. Trey Sermon, you watched the game in full today, so I feel like you because me and Mick both watched it last night today, and maybe you have different feelings on it when you're not watching it consecutively. You saw the lows and then the highs of Trey Sermon today, and he's battling for a running back position now at the Eagles. I know that our friend Jamal Singleton, Coach Singleton, thinks every one of the running backs could be an RB1 for a team in the league. Do you think Trey Sermon's stock went up or down after the game yesterday?
I think it clearly went up. I think in the end, it was definitely higher than it started. It did dip with the fumble. I was worried about him when that came on. But when that fumble happened, the one thing I noticed was our QB1 heading straight up, literally within seconds. So he was off the pitch straight after the fumble, staring into space as you do when you've had an absolute nightmare of a play, and there's Jalen Hurts in his ear. And obviously, we don't know what was being said, but I think we will have a pretty good idea gist of what it would be. It would be inspirational words, calming words, making you go, look, it doesn't matter, flush it. I think, that's it. The words that went through my head were flush it. He's telling him just to flush it, as is Jalen Hurts is one of his favourite phrases, is to just, doesn't matter, it's done now. You can't get it back. Just go out there and rectify it, bring your stock back up, which is exactly what he went and did. He only had 5 attempts for 54 yards. I say only. Obviously, it's still an average of 10 yards.
Well, more than anyone else.
But in terms of, I'm talking in terms of, I tend to compare it to an average NFL game. So when you're looking at an NFL running back, stop trying to distract me, Liam, with your cat. You got 5. Obviously, he's only getting a portion of a game. So you extrapolate that over a game, and he'd probably be having 100 yards. And I think there was
when you factor in those receiving yards as well, I mean, it could have been that could have been the breakout game for Trey Sermon, saying, "I am RB2."
I think it still was. It just wasn't as much as, like you say, it could have been if he hadn't fumbled that ball. There was a clear path for him to add on to the total running yards even more. And I think based on
would have been a 25 to 35 to 25 to 30 yard run if he didn't fumble the ball. Yeah.
So he'd be approaching 100 yards rushing. He'd be at 75, but he'd be in the upper echelons of 100 yards rushing game off 6-7 attempts, which is
averaging like 12 or 13 yards per carry, which
would be an absolute phenomenal game for a running back. So I think, and based, combining that with Coach Singleton's sort of, little tidbits of information regarding the fact that even though you've got DeAndre Swift on your team, he was still talking highly of Trey Sermon. He's had him around for 2 and a bit seasons now. I trust the organization that they really see something, that there is that that guy in training who just needs that opportunity out on the pitch. So I think he's definitely put his stock up. He's definitely shot up the depth charts as to what order he falls in. I definitely think that he's moved into the top 3. He's probably maybe, to be generous, he's maybe at RB3. I think you still got DeAndre Swift and Gainwell was 1 and 2. Has he overtaken Penny? Is he more reliable than Penny? No, they're probably about the same in terms of their reliability, their injury proneness. So you can argue that there's a 3-4 sort of topsy-turvy, depending on how you're feeling, which day of the week it is, which one you have above the other. Penny didn't have a bad game either. He had two carries for 18 yards and averaging, obviously, with a 16-yard long rush. So I think it's a good place to be in. I don't think we should be concerned by the lack of the inability to make a decision. There's no clear-cut choice. That's not a bad thing, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm on the fence, Phil.
There's only room for one of us up here, mate.
Very good. I'm on the fence about Trey Sermon's stock going up. I really am, because I know how important ball security is both to Jamal Singleton and Nick Sirianni. It's a what's the phrase they used last year? The turnover differential for Nick Sirianni is one of the most important factors in football. I'm not saying I disagree with you that his stock went up. I'm not. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here based on, historically what we've heard out of Sirianni, historically what we've heard out of Jamal Singleton. I think Trey Sermon did last night, not Sherman, it's an old quarterback who's been retired by Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith. I don't know if anyone else saw that on the line there. But Trey Sermon, without the H, I think he showed the player he can be last night. And I think for the first time, he's shown real glimpses that he could be an absolute elite runner in the league, because the touchdown was insane. Like, I don't think the touchdown is being given anywhere near enough credits that it needs, because he was running down the center and juked twice to the outside and sprinted away from the DBs. It's not very often you see a running back leave DBs in the dust, regardless of whether they're first team cornerbacks or second team cornerbacks. You don't often see running backs leave cornerbacks or DBs in general, just going into the end zone. And the juke was fantastic. The touchdown was great. And the run before he fumbled was fantastic. I think he had about 5 players who came and hit him at the same time when he fumbled the ball. It wasn't like he just fumbled the ball by hitting one guy. He was running into a mass of people. So I'm kind of contradicting myself here by saying whether I'm sitting on the fence, whether the smoke's gone up. Maybe I'm convincing myself that it has gone up, even just talking this through. But I think what Trey Sermon did was Trey Sermon showed the player he can be in the NFL and the potential he still has. Mick, you talked about it a lot, that championship game coming out of college, where he just like absolutely destroyed the entire field. But I still think, and I want your opinion on this, Mick, I still think the running back room at the moment is Devontae Smith, Jesus, Jandre Swift, Kenny Gainwell, Rashard Penny, Brooks Scott. When I feel harsh to Scott. Mick, what about you? Give me a 1 to 5.
Did you put Brooks in the Scott?
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
That's something. Explain that.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I think there's a potential they take 5 running backs anyway in 53.
Okay.
And Jamal Singleton, I feel like he thinks Boston Scott is his long lost child. He loves him so much. And you can tell when we're speaking to him on the podcast, like he effuses about the character, the man, him being around in general, and he's Mr. Dependable. It's Greg Ward at running back. That's what Boston Scott is. A better version of Greg Ward, wide receiver at running back. That is Boston Scott. He's Mr. Dependable. But I think, but if you're going to ask me about, maybe I'm talking to you about talent here. Talent-wise, I would have Swift, Penny, Sermon as the top 3. I wouldn't have Gainwell there. But because we haven't seen as much as we've seen out of Penny, Swift, and Sermon, we've seen more in the NFL than we've seen out of Gainwell. It's mind-blowing. It's really difficult.
It's a good problem to have, to be fair. We've got a collection of guys who are on the periphery. You know, if we don't have a clear RB1, and maybe that is a problem, but maybe it isn't.
Hang on, did I say Brooks ahead of Scott rather than Sermon?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
I've just realized my error now. No, I meant Sermon. I've just realized.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, that
Sermon.
makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sorry.
Because Brooks is getting cut.
Brooks is cut. I was looking at the running backs there, and I just said the wrong name. I apologize. What I meant to say was my top 5 would be Swift, Gainwell. This is me thinking what they think. Swift, Gainwell, Penny, Sermon, Scott, and then Brooks is not making the roster. No.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and whether or not they carry all of those guys is another thing. And like you said, they're sort of preaching this run back by committee thing. They did the same thing last year, and it never actually materialised. But we had Sanders at that point in time, and I think the same thing's happening again, but it's Swift this time, because I think Swift is by far the clear front runner for to be RB1 in this team, not only for his pass catching ability, but I just think he's genuinely the best player out of all of them. As long as he can, stay healthy, and he has the ability as well, and the pedigree is there. The rest of the guys will, just fall into some sort of rotational piece behind Swift. But
is this not a case of the vested veteran situation as well? Because Boston Scott will be able to get through waivers, put him on the practice squad, swap him around if you need to. Boston Scott's always going to want to.
I don't think
re-sign with the
Boston
Eagles.
Scott has been on the practice squad for the Eagles for a long time. So I don't know whether you putting Boston Scott on the practice squad is a sign for Boston Scott saying I'm way too fucking good to be on the.
But we've not
practice
had 5 running back candidates for the squad before. Think back to last season.
I think Boston Scott, I think makes the 53 no matter what. Per my opinion, I think Boston Scott makes the 53 no matter what.
It's almost just like it's that cheat code, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to say. Is that you put Boston Scott not because you don't think he's better than Sermon. It's because you can get Boston Scott straight to the practice squad. Whereas Sermon, especially after a game where he scored a touchdown, could have had 7,500 yards. There might be someone out there going, "Why he was the 49ers high round pick, and then he came to the Eagles and he's reignited himself. We'll have a flyer on him." And thinking you'd more like to keep Sermon if you put him on the squad rather than Scott because you can get through waivers and no one's really going to go for Boston Scott.
The more I think about it, it's a non-starter though because I think they take 5 running backs and they take Sermon, they take Penny, they take Gainwell, they take Scott.
That's a conversation for when we do our 53.
Yeah. It's interesting though. It is interesting. Let's talk about defense. We talked about it a lot. So Sidney Brown, Mick, one of our shagger candidates potentially.
Shagger candidate, yeah. Lively, very lively. This guy has such great awareness on the field and great vision, great close down speed, great energy. I mean, did you see him knock the ball out of the hands of the Browns player after he had already scored the touchdown? He just went up,
I did.
Bashed it straight out. Like,
who do you think you are?
Yeah, this is our house. And I love that. I love everything about Sidney Brown's energy, and and that's why I think he's such a top candidate for the whole Shagger discussion that we've had, and he has a great backstory. He's got such great energy. He's got the physique. He's got the hair. He's got everything. I really like Sidney Brown. If you can't tell,
is he going to be starting safety for the Eagles in Game 1 this year?
I think it's credible. It's credible, and he's been making his way up the roster. If you remember at the start of training camp, he was working with the 3s.
Yeah,
started working with the 2s, and now he's being rotated in with the rest of the safeties alongside Reed Blankenship as to be the starter. I think he can definitely cement his place in there with what he's produced so far in training camp and the preseason game so far, because he just looks like a guy who's always going to put himself in the best position to make a play. Either that's tackling a man to the ground or ball hawking. I think Sidney Brown has the ability to do both.
I'm going to stay with you because I'm going to come to you at corner in a second, Phil. But Kayvon Wallace, one of your favourite prospects in the Eagles jersey, right? He had a decent game. I mean, he's had not the 7 sacks, which I initially put on my notes, which you correctly pointed out was inaccurate. But he had a combined 7 tackles. 6 of them were solo tackles. And he also had the fumble recovery when McQB2 we'll talk about McQB2 in a second, when he knocked the ball out of the hands of a Browns player who I can't remember who it was, but and he had the fumble recovery. Thoughts on Kayvon Wallace? I mean, he's making the 53, right?
Yeah, more than likely, Kayvon's going to make the 53.
Have you seen more from him? I want to rephrase this question. Have you seen more from him this preseason? Because before the season started, you were shitting all over him. Kayvon Wallace didn't make 53. You weren't impressed with what you've seen so far. We spent a 3rd or a 4th round pick, and I can't remember which one it was. Relatively high draft pick for a safety. Anyway, and you were right. We hadn't seen a lot from him, but can you give this guy a bit of slack? Are you seeing more from him now? Are you seeing some potential there, or are you still logger-headed in this guy is not cut for the NFL?
Well, it depends if I want to just eat crow or if I want to double down. And you know what? I'll double down. Wallace isn't good enough. It's not good enough to start at safety. I would rather take a gamble on Sidney Brown than I would on Kayvon Wallace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people would take a gamble on Sidney Brown over Kayvon Wallace from what we've seen so far. But would you Are you more confident in Kayvon Wallace's ability than you were before the preseason started?
Before the preseason started, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can't deny what the guys produced. So, I mean, fair play to them for buckling down and making some plays. But again, that don't impress me.
Not too bothered. That don't impress me much. We could have had two songs, because earlier on in the podcast, Phil went One Chance, One Opportunity, and I nearly broke out into Eminem. So we could have had two sing-alongs in this podcast so far. Phil, just mentioned
I didn't think I'd be quoting Shania Twain on this podcast.
Well, me and Katie were doing our wedding songs earlier on today, and Shania Twain was not on there, so nor was Eminem for that matter. But there you go. Maybe we'll release some of these songs we're going to have on the podcast next week for our wedding in 3 weeks and 2 days time, folks. So it's coming on fast. Corner. Talking about pop stars, Ringo. Anybody?
Ringo was not the star of the cornerback room, unfortunately. Yeah. From what I saw, anyway. Obviously, he has one standout play, a Browns touchdown, where he seemingly was all but certain to catch the interception. Whether he lost it in the lights or the only explanation for it is that he didn't see it. So it looked like it was coming straight for him. He hadn't seen it and he stopped where he was. He didn't carry on with the flight of the ball. And he was just about 2 yards away from the receiver when he caught the ball and then just skipped into the end zone. Now, I like Ringo. I like what he's done so far, but one of that is obviously needs to be explained. So I'm hoping it is just one of those things where he's lost it in the lights, and it's one of those things. Most of us have played football, and you lose the ball in the floodlights. The ball's coming at your face, and you just duck out of the way because you're like protecting yourself. I know it's a slightly different situation, but if you don't know where the ball is, you can't catch it. It's pure and simple. But
yeah,
if that can be attributed down to whether if he'd been in a better position or if he'd been looking at the ball a bit earlier, caught the flight of the ball, but put that down to being a rookie and hopefully that will get picked up in the film room and it'll be analysed by the defensive coordinator, and hopefully they'll come to a resolution and that'll be a thing of the past. But I'm liking what I've seen from him so far. It was almost when you've got a player that you really like and then you see something like that happen, you don't go to the whole he's going to get cut.
Yeah. You don't go all in.
You kind of go in.
Just a one-off. I did just look to check if "Lost in the Lights" was a song. Dua Lipa, 2017. There you go. "Lost in Your Light." Close enough. So the puns from last week have turned into the songs of this week, which means you know how much whiskey and beer has been consumed so far on this podcast.
Yeah, British and Irish jukebox.
Absolutely. Just want to touch on the Kobe Dean very briefly. I know we talked about it earlier on in this podcast. I was not allowed to have him as one of my shaggers, but I'm still going to put him out there as an option before we decide who our shagger is for the season. The Kobe Dean made a shagger-like play, and he knocked the ball out of a Browns running back's hands, which led to the full recovery. Cunningham, we touched on earlier as well, has had a really, really, really good preseason since he joined a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Miles Jack has barely been breathed out of the names of beat reporters in Philadelphia. Sirianni was quoted after the game as saying he really likes what he's seeing from Dean. And he also mentioned Cunningham as being really impressive since he's joined. Christian Ellis has flashed in camp from the linebacker position. My question to both of you, and I'll go to Mick first, is who are the 1 and 2 starting linebackers, disregarding Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith, who may be labeled as linebackers on the Eagles roster? But who are your 2 starting linebackers? Is it McQB2 Dean? Is it Christian Ellis? Is it Cunningham?
Yeah,
is it Jack?
It's definitely McQB2 Dean. I don't think any of us could seriously argue it not being McQB2 Dean at this point. So it's just who is it going to be paired with? And
is it Moreau?
At this moment in time, it seems to be Zach Cunningham. It does, and I know that's the easy answer because he seems to be making the plays. We talked about the joint practices that we had with the Browns, and it was the ones versus the ones, and Zach Cunningham was in there making plays. He tipped a couple of balls for Reed Blankenship to make the interception against Deshaun Watson. So this is the guy that's proven it against the ones, not the twos and threes, and in the preseason game scenario. So Cunningham is put himself above the parapet for me at the moment. Nicholas Morrow hasn't done a lot since coming in. I don't think he's got a lot of guaranteed money either. So that doesn't put us in a position where we actually need to keep the guy, unlike, a certain quarterback.
He had 5 tackles last night, just for those listening who don't know Moreau. One tackle of that was only a solo. The other 4 were assisted. Cunningham had 7 tackles, a tackle for loss in there as well. And we just talked about what McQB2 did.
I mean, if I was to rank them, like I would go for McQB2 one, and then I'd go Cunningham, and then I'd probably go Ellis, and then I would likely go
Edmonds, safety linebacker. Can you see?
Well, he's designated as a safety at the moment, so if I just
he has been talked about as transitioning into linebacker though. During the offseason. Yeah,
but just purely the position, I'd probably then go Jack, and then
So you go Dean, Cunningham, Ellis, Moreau, then Jack, or Jack then Moreau?
Jack then Moreau.
Jack then Moreau is your 5. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not too sure the Jack Moreau split so far, but I think I agree with the first 3. I think Jack has the much higher potential, the ceiling, based on what he's done in the league so far.
Yeah,
maybe he just needs a bit of time to bed in. Yeah.
Above. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. I think we've covered what we need to cover, folks. Been a good podcast. Enjoyed it immensely. Next week we have Sheil Kapadia joining the podcast. National beat writer for The Ringer, former Birds of Friends, an athletic national writer and podcaster, and second time in podcast. So looking forward to getting Sheil on there. He's always very generous with his takes, with his time. He's probably my favorite beat writer, Phil. When you shouted about ESP earlier on, I'll give you Sheil Kapadia as mine for the Eagles. So looking forward to having him on. It's my fangirl, my fanboy time next week when we get him. So listening for that podcast, and then we're into the season, folks. Then we're starting to get into the nuts and bolts of the season. The podcast after that will likely be. We'll probably do 2 after that before the season starts. But we'll be getting into the season itself and my wedding, of course. Listen, it's been great.
A live podcast from the wedding. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll get married if that happens. No, but it'll be good. Listen, Mick, thank you so much. It's been really interesting and fun to talk through everything that's been going on. I think next week when we speak to Sheil, I'd really like to talk about to look at the rankings again as to where they are in his perspective and in our perspective. And then following that, it's the 53-man. Looking forward to that podcast as well. Mick, thank you. Phil, thank you. It's been an incredible podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. We are the British and Irish Eagles. You have 2 weeks left to sign up for the trip of a lifetime to go and see the Eagles play Dallas on the 2nd to the 7th of November. All the details are on our website. Please go and check it out if you will. Enjoy the next few days, Eagles gang. We'll speak to you soon. Go Birds.